So, the left-wing Tory Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has announced his latest budget, which means we're going to give you the summary of what was announced earlier, the good, the bad, and what it actually means politically. Okay, let's get into this, what's been going on, because on the one hand, as a budget, objectively, it's pretty cautious because they want to get ready for the next election. So they make a big deal out of the tiny, tiny good news to say, hey, we are so radical. On the other hand, they're hiding all the bad stuff for now. But the reality is, this is going to be quite interesting because it is making Keir Starmer and the Labour side kind of struggle a little bit. The more the Tory party goes to the left and pro-big government, the harder it is for the Labour Party to even promote big government or socialism because the Tories are already doing it. Now, first things first, I have a problem with this. What? What is this nonsense? Okay, so it says, Jeremy Hunt and the Treasury posted this. Enterprise, employment, education, everywhere. So they decided to go with all the E's, the four E's. E's are good. And they clearly ran out of words. They said, right, so we got enterprise, we got employment, we got education, something else, something everywhere. I think even a monkey would have been able to come up with the fourth E. You know what it is? Energy. That's one of the problems right now. Energy security. Why did they not put energy in that list? It's just stupid. Anyway, let's go to this because one of the problems with this budget is that they've decided to increase taxes on small-sized businesses and medium-sized businesses. But let's focus on the good stuff and the bad stuff. So Jeremy Hunt decided to announce the budget and everybody was waiting to see how much damage it's going to cause to the economy. But the actual announcement of what's going on in the country was quite interesting. Again, this is all about politics, unfortunately. It's got nothing to do with the economy. So they said that the UK economy will shrink by 0.2% this year, so a little bit. So it will avoid a technical recession. Yay! Celebrate, guys. So that's good, apparently, because of the next part. Because it says, well, the economy is forecast, the OBR said, that it will grow by 1.8% in 2024, next year, and 2.5% in 2025. So impressive. Well, of course it's going to happen because we've hit the rock bottom right now. Any growth is going to be big at this point. The other good news is that, again, inevitably, inflation is going to be falling from 10.7% to 2.9% by the end of this year. Now, the problem with this is that, especially when the mainstream media are talking about this sort of nonsense, is that they make people think that if it goes down from 10% to 2%, for example, or 3%, they make it sound like, make you feel that, oh, their prices are going to go down. It's not necessarily going to go down. It's just the rate of the increase of prices is going to slow down. To be fair, as long as the wages go up and the economy grows, it doesn't matter. It will eventually catch up. But it's a bit of a problem. You're going to have to deal with this long term. But politically, this is good for the Tories, for them not to get completely excited and complacent about the next election. But the Tory machine and the Tory propaganda, which is all the newspapers and everything else, they are very good at election times. They're not good at running the country, clearly, but they're very good at election times. If the polls narrow and obviously inflation comes down and GDP goes up a little bit, they're going to sell that as, hey, we fixed the country, guys. Vote for us again. And Starmer will struggle with that. Now, let's talk about the reality. So we've got small businesses and medium-sized businesses. They're going to get hit because business tax is going to be raised from 19% to 25%. This is absolutely embarrassing. There's a reason I put business tax, not corporation tax, because the state and the government, successive governments and the Treasury, they came up with this very, very smart, manipulative move to change the word business to corporation. So they call it corporation tax. So a lot of people assume, well, that only applies to Amazon and Apple and Google and all the big oil companies and banks and all that. No. In fact, firstly, we have to call it business tax because it applies to all businesses. And the reality is that the more you increase taxes on the multinational big corporations, it's not going to affect them. A lot of them don't really have their bases here, so they don't really pay properly corporation tax on this. They can afford expensive accountants and lawyers to find loopholes. The only people that's going to get hit are small businesses and medium-sized businesses, and like all the tiny shops and all the plumbers and taxi drivers. That's the problem. And no one, they can't afford expensive lawyers or accountants. So they lie to the public saying we are going after the corporations. Yeah, the top. Yeah, the 1%. Are you really? That's the problem. So it's going to be completely sad. It's also sad to say that 13 years of so-called Tory government, and I kind of miss the level of tax burden we had under the new Labour government. It is extremely sad to say that this government has gone so pro-tax that even we kind of miss the 2000s when you had Blair and Brown, at least when it comes to tax, not everything else. But this is bad, absolutely bad. Anyway, they're going to give some semi-red meat when it comes to certain policies like pensions. They have said that all the lifetime allowance on tax-free pension contributions have been scrapped. And they gave some like good stuff, but they also get some bad stuff. The reality is, again, this is just political, because the parties that we have, the main parties, they know that the biggest voting bloc in the country are the elderly and pensioners. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's because they care enough to vote. The problem is the young people don't vote, and the young people then complain. Why isn't anything being done about us? It's because politicians operate on a mentality to save their own seats. And if you don't vote, if you don't have a voting bloc, then you don't really matter. But on the other hand, when it comes to pensions and the elderly, on the one hand, successive governments, including this one, they hit the elderly, and then they throw them some red meat. Basically, it's bribery when it comes to like pension policies, anything else like that, or some handouts. A lot of these policies ended up actually helping the people who happen to be pensioners, but they are rich. They're already rich, not just asset rich, but also in terms of income that they still have. But those who are actually struggling, they might still be pensioners and elderly, but because of the energy security and inflation and everything else, and there's like literally no proper safety net anymore, and social care, that's still a problem, they're still going to be hit. And this is a real issue that's not been fixed, even though, as I said, they are still a voting bloc, the elderly. So you assume that politicians should care to come up with proper solutions. But no. Everything is about plaster, short-term plasters. So when it comes to families and childcare, this is quite good. It's pretty good, although some people are kicking off, even on the conservative side. 13 hours free childcare from 9 months to 2 years, to a 2-year-old. So the reality is they've increased the support for childcare because childcare is so expensive in this country. And then you have, obviously, the more libertarian conservative side who ideologically believe that, well, we shouldn't even have any free support. Well, you can't really do that because the system is already combined with everything else we have. You're going to need some sort of state support for those who are struggling. And then you also have now some small c social conservatives or Christian conservatives. They're also kicking off. This is for you because there's a lot of support for childcare and also just families, and in terms of like tax allowance and tax deductions. It's going to help, and it's there to help people of this country to have babies again, to get married, to have family values, to actually be able to have babies instead of us relying on economic migrants and mass migration because we stopped having babies. And this is a big problem. So there's a big gap between up to the boomer generation and the younger generation. The younger generation from this country, they're not even getting married, let alone having babies. This is not sustainable for the next few decades. So even though I'm not really pro big government, something had to be done, at least short term. So when it comes to the childcare support, I can live with that. But there has to be a proper reform long term. So you don't completely rely on the state to give handouts, even when it comes to childcare. You have to come up with a better model to make childcare cheaper. Right, when it comes to field duty, again, these are tiny red meats that they're throwing out to keep people happy. Field duty frozen, and government will help with energy bills again for another 3 months. So they keep extending it every few months. Again, what do they say? Short-term plasters. They still something has to be done. I get it from the government's perspective, and all these governments, they're struggling right now. So they say, well, we can't really do any radical policies like Liz Truss and Kwasi. They're not brave enough. They're afraid of losing their seats or their leadership. What happened to Liz Truss? So they keep coming up with these short-term plasters. They keep extending these plasters, which again, fine, I guess. But again, it costs a lot of money. You just have to sort out the economy and inflation and energy portfolio that we have, start fracking and do nuclear, and in long term it will be fine. But we're still waiting. Anyway, Let's go to the next red meat. Ooh, freebies. So, well, not necessarily freebies, but duty and tax on draft beer will be frozen. Yay! Only in pubs, so not really beer you get from supermarkets. So it is quite interesting that it will help, obviously, when it comes to generating more revenue, in fact, because more people are going to go out there and buy beer in a pub. But inflation is still high, and you're taxing people so much, and there's still 20% VAT tax. And like, this is just completely crazy. It doesn't really matter if you freeze beer duty. It's still going to be expensive, especially in London. For those of you not in London, if you haven't been to London for a long time, fun fact, a standard lager in London, central London, is now just over £7. Over £7. So at places, some places, £7.50 for a pint of beer. Yeah, I know. You could buy a house in the north sometimes. So let's go to defense spending. All right, so somehow this has actually become controversial these days in this country. Back then, it was supported by both centre left and centre right, but defence spending is now being boosted by £11 billion over the next 5 years. So that's actually nothing. People are going to get angry saying, well, we got other problems, why are we doing this? And, forget about the debate about Russia and Ukraine stuff. This is just about our own defence spending. But people are still angry. 11 billion over the next 5 years. It's nothing compared to everything else we're doing. If we cancel HS2, we're going to have so much money. So I don't really have a problem with that. And we have to strengthen our defense. The problem we have with foreign policy and defense policy is it's not really about the spending of it. It's mostly about strategy and actual planning when it comes to geopolitics. That needs to be sorted long term. Anyway, this was my summary and analysis. Let me know what you think. And if obviously there were a lot of other stuff in the budget. I just picked the key highlights. Let me know in the comment section what was your favorite and what is the worst thing that you actually hate from the budget. I'm Maya 2C and we are the media.